Deb insists that you should cut a grilled cheese sandwich across the shortest dimension like that, which to me is just baffling. I always cut my sandwiches into triangles because they're much easier to bite that way. Also because you get like a bigger surface area for a cheese pull. They've got that point you can dip. My sandwich needs an acute angle as a point of entry, right? Anyhow, I don't know how you feel about that, but let me know in the comments.
Hey everyone, it's Kenji. I'm gonna make some grilled cheese.
So as usual with episodes of my show related to my podcast, The Recipe with Kenji and Deb, I'm making two versions. One of them is my recipe, and one of them is my friend Deb Perlman's recipe of Smitten Kitchen. I'll link to both recipes below so that you can have these recipes if you'd like. Although grilled cheese is pretty simple, so you should be able to just kind of follow along and do it. All right, so I'm starting with mine. Well, I'm going to cook them at the same time, but I'm starting a little bit with mine because there's a little step you got to do with mine before you even begin assembling the sandwich. And that's, I'm going to get some butter in a pan here. Relatively low heat, so sort of medium-low. If you happen to have a like one of these, control freak or something, or some way of maintaining pan temperature, I go for 320 degrees. So regular butter there, unsalted. You could also use salted, but I always sprinkle a little bit of extra salt in the pan because I find that that salty crust on a grilled cheese, the saltiness combined with the sort of golden brown toastiness is especially tasty. So, not making it the normal way. I'm starting with the bread in the pan. I'm going to toast the inside of the bread so that the cheese is going to go there, and we're going to get kind of double the toastiness. Meanwhile, I'm going to start assembling Deb's sandwich. So this one, it's what she calls her Frico grilled cheese, so it's going to have a crust of cheese on the outside as well as melted cheese on the inside. I'm using sourdough bread. She says you can use whatever bread you want, but I'm using sourdough because that's what she uses in the picture of hers, at least. This is bread from Seawolf Bakery here in Seattle, which is wonderful sourdough bread. She likes to use shredded cheese, so I grated this off of a big block of Tillamook medium cheddar. She likes to use shredded cheese because she says you get better, it's easier to get sort of even coverage over the slice of bread when you do that, which I suppose is true. I usually use sliced cheese just because I can't be bothered to shred cheese. So with her recipe, so mine you can use regular butter out of the fridge. With hers, she recommends spreading the butter onto the bread, which means you need room temperature spreadable butter. I usually don't have room temperature spreadable butter, which is why I just melt mine in the pan. But today, because the recipe called for it, I took the time to soften up some butter. I let that sit out since this morning, so it's been out on the counter a couple hours. And that's about it. It's about a teaspoon of butter directly on the bread, and I'll put some on the other side when I flip it over. All right, so this first side of the bread here, you don't have to let it go too dark or anything. That is plenty, just a light toast. The idea is we want to get some of that golden brown flavor, some of that butteriness in there, obviously the salt flavor in there, and then we want the bread to be warm so that when we assemble the sandwich, the cheese has sort of a jump start, a melting. I'm going to use a few different cheeses, so I always do at least one slice of American cheese, and I lay that kind of in the center. And then I fill the rest of the sandwich out with whatever other cheeses I have. It could be all American, but I like doing sort of a mix of other cheeses so that you get some more interesting flavors, because the quality of American cheese that makes it so wonderful is that it melts really well, and that's because it has emulsifying salts. So people will say that American cheese is not real cheese. It is obviously real cheese. So American cheese is starts with real cheese. They take the cheese, they combine it with generally extra milk and then an emulsifying salt. And then emulsifying salt, what it does is it makes it so that as the cheese melts, the fat doesn't separate out of it, so that it melts really nicely and smoothly. It also prevents the proteins in it from clumping up, so that it doesn't get sort of stringy and rubbery. That's why American cheese, even when it's melted, it's kind of nice and gooey, whereas most other cheeses will turn a little bit greasy as they melt. And the thing about American cheese is that there are enough emulsifying salts in there that they will help the other cheeses maintain that sort of gooey texture as well. So one slice of American cheese is all it takes to help all of the other cheeses in there maintain their gooiness. All right. Salt the pan again. I'm gonna get my sandwich in there now. Again, very, very medium, low heat. Around 320 degrees I'm trying to maintain. 320 degrees with a slow flame. That's what I want, not a fast flame. I want it as if I was putting this over a relatively low burner. So I'm going to move it around just a little bit to absorb that butter. Then I'm going to lay it over here. And I will get my other sandwich in. So I'm going to start here by putting about a tablespoon of cheese directly onto the hot pan. You could do this with nonstick, you could do it with cast iron, you could do it with carbon steel. I'm using carbon steel, and then we're going to lay that sandwich down on top of it. All right, now I'll spread that second side with butter. And as for the timing here, you know, we're looking for around 3 minutes per side. That's what I aim for. You want to go nice and slow. You don't want to rush it, because the worst thing to happen to a grilled cheese is when the outside gets burnt and then the middle and the cheese is barely melted. You want it nicely evenly melted the whole way through. Hey Siri, play Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me by Elton John and George Michael.
Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me duet with Elton John by Elton John and George Michael now playing.
Because I find that that's the perfect timing for this thing. You let the sandwiches cook on one side while George sings, and then by the time Elton comes in, it's ready to flip. So I'll come back when Elton John comes in. Hey Siri, turn it all the way down. I don't want to get a copyright strike. Ooh, look at that. Trust the process. Comes out perfect every time on that song. The song also just puts me, yeah, it's like a Pavlovian response now, because I seriously do play that song whenever I make a grilled cheese. And so when I hear that song, I think grilled cheese. All right, so a little more butter, a little sprinkle of salt. That guy's going down. I'm gonna put my chef's press on here. Not a ton of weight on there, you know, just enough that you get some really nice contact. I'm using the 13-ounce weight, although usually I would use the 8-ounce. I think they're in the wash right now, though. All right, and so for this other sandwich, we're gonna make sure we use a fish spatula or a flexible metal spatula of some kind, so that we can make sure that we get all of that cheese crust out of there and leave nothing behind. Oh, look at that. All right, so we'll put our remaining tablespoon or so of cheese down. Get our sandwich back in. Now, by the time that song is over, these sandwiches will be done. Hey Siri, turn it back up. All right, I'll see you in. All right, song is over and our grilled cheese is ready. Let's see if the process worked again. It's never failed me before. Look at that, perfect color. Nice golden brown. Melted in the middle. Ready to go. And Deb's coming out. There you go. Woo. Alrighty. Alright, so 2 versions of a grilled cheese sandwich. I'm going to cut them in half. I'm going to show you this trick when you cut a sandwich. First of all, Deb insists that you should cut a grilled cheese sandwich across the shortest dimension like that, which to me is just baffling. I always cut my sandwiches into triangles because they're much easier to bite that way. Also because you get like a bigger surface area for a cheese pull. They've got that point you can dip. My sandwich needs an acute angle as a point of entry, right? Anyhow, I don't know how you feel about that, but let me know in the comments. If you want to get that really nice grilled cheese pull, here's what you do. You cut it, you put it back together, and then you kind of squish the sides in as if you were it's kind of like a tube of toothpaste, you know? That way the cheese kind of rebinds in the middle, and then when you pull it apart, it goes, whoa, look at that. All right, whew. All right, on Deb's, I don't know if we'll get the same kind of cheese pull. Oftentimes with sourdough, I find the cheese kind of melts into the sandwich, into the bread, that is. So you don't get that distinct layer in the middle, but let's see. Ah, pretty good. All right, and let's go sit down and taste them and talk about them, all right? All right, so I'm gonna start with mine. Gooey goozy. Goozy is a new word. Gooey and oozy cheese. Delightful. Delectable. I really like having that extra butteriness in the middle. That's a trick I learned from my old friend Adam Kuban. We used to work together at Serious Eats. He was the founder of a site called Slice and a site called The Hamburger Today, which are kind of the seminal pizza and hamburger blogs started in the early 2000s, like the early days of blogs. They eventually got bought by Serious Eats, and I don't think exist anymore. But Adam was the managing editor at Serious Eats for a while. He was the one who taught me about frying the inside of the sandwich before assembling it. And it's a trick I've been using ever since. I think it's wonderful. It gives it that extra, because the best part of the bread on a grilled cheese is that buttery crust, right? The golden brown buttery part. And so you kind of double that up by frying the inside first. It doesn't make it any healthier, but you're not eating grilled cheese for your health anyway. I also really like putting the salt on the pan like that. It gives it that really nice salty crunch right when you bite it. It's the first thing your tongue hits, so it gives it that really nice salty crunch right at the beginning that accents the flavor. It's why I, as Adam Ragusa would say, why I salt my pan and not my grilled cheese, I guess. All kinds of Adam tricks today. All right, let's try Deb's. So this one's sourdough. I can tell, one thing I can tell right away is that when you make a frico crust like this, the one thing you are sacrificing is that you aren't getting the golden brown toast on the bread, because you're getting the golden brown toast on the cheese instead. So it is going to sort of fundamentally change the flavor of your sandwich. Does taste very good though. I'm personally of the mind that sourdough is not the best bread for a grilled cheese. Like, I find it doesn't pair well with that well with cheese flavor, or at least not that it doesn't pair well. It's more that for me, when I'm eating a grilled cheese, like I try and think of that sort of classic grilled cheese flavor. That's what comes to mind, and like that's what I crave when I want a grilled cheese. And sourdough doesn't hit that mark for me exactly. Although maybe if you grew up eating sourdough grilled cheese, it does. It's all perfect personal choice. I would also say that the frico crust, the crispy cheese crust, it makes the sandwich feel greasier because the butter doesn't get absorbed by the bread really. Like this one, there's a lot more actual butter in this one, I believe, than in this one. But this one feels greasier because there's this kind of grease shield on there. So the butter that was in the pan doesn't get soaked up into the bread again. Instead, it winds up on your fingers, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but just an observation. This is the kind of sandwich I feel that's calling out for some kind of filling, like an additional ingredient in there. Maybe some like sauteed onions, caramelized onions, or maybe like a fig jam or something in there that offsets the richness of it, but also balances out that the sourness of the sourdough, the acidity of the sourdough. It needs something. I think it needs something a little bit sweet, and I think that would improve it actually. In fact, I know for a fact that Deb's favorite grilled cheese recipe includes Gruyere and these kind of jammy onions. And that I think would be excellent in sourdough like this. All right. 2 different grilled cheese sandwiches, 2 different methods. Deb and I will be talking about this on an episode of our podcast, on the grilled cheese episode of The Recipe with Kenji and Deb. I'll leave a link in the description below. If I time this right, that episode will have just come out, so you can tune in and listen to it, subscribe. You can also listen to our past episodes. In the show, we talk about our recipes, and so I cook hers, she cooks mine. And we talk about how we kind of look under the kitchen hood and show our audiences the process that goes into developing a recipe. Grilled cheese is relatively simple, but there are still a lot of factors in here. There's bread choices. There's whether you like something like sourdough or sandwich bread, whether you use American cheese or a fancier cheese, whether you spread softened butter on the bread or put the butter in the pan, how long you cook it for, all kinds of factors. And these are all things that I feel, what you dip it into, whether it's still a grilled cheese if you start adding ingredients into it, or if it then suddenly becomes a melt. So if you listening or watching have opinions on that, please leave them in the description below, or please leave them in the comments below, because I'd love to hear about that. And yeah, tune into the podcast. It's a lot of fun. I have fun doing it. Our goal is to empower home cooks and make them feel more comfortable in the kitchen and help them sort of develop their own perfect recipes. All right, guys, gals, non-binary pals, I will see you next time. Oh.